We developed the canola disc based off of wanting to plant canola by singulating the seed and getting the consistent depth control and the way that you can press your seed trench closed just with a corn planting unit. The disc was derived from a John Deere sugar beet disc, which only has 45 cells, and the cells are not shaped for canola, but it was something that in the infancy of doing this was how it started. And when we came up with the canola disc, the big hurdle was to get the knockout wheel working, because with the small seed, plugging the holes is the #1 problem. All the other issues that you can hear of the leaking row units and the seed coming out the side, those are all relatively easy fixes. But getting the disc to work properly, keeping the holes clean with the rolling knockout wheel was the biggest hurdle.
So by doing this, we mentioned that we can save on seed costs. So we have many growers that are toying with this. We've had guys that have gone down to 1.6 pounds. We've had guys that go to 3.5 pounds. But at the end of the day, you're saving a lot of seed costs, just because when we started putting canola in years and years and years ago with an air seeder or a drill, we were putting it down as high as 6.5 pounds. And a lot of guys forget about that. We were probably at 6.5 pounds and 5 pounds, and then now it's continually getting lower and lower. The question is, can you do 3 pounds an acre with an air seeder? No, you cannot, because there is just too much. It doesn't put the seed in the ground properly, #1, and #2, it doesn't singulate it. So you still have a controlled spill, and you have gaps in your row. You could have a gap where it's like this, and you could have 10 seeds within 4 inches. Well, that's not proper singulation. A planter has no choice. It sucks the seed onto the cell, it drops it down by gravity, and it places it exactly how it's picking up on the cell. So the average population that we're going with a planter, you're probably going to see anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inch spacing between seeds. On average, you're going to see an average of 7 plants per square foot, but in our fields, we've had as low as 4, and it still achieved the same yield as if you had 7. So I don't know if we've really touched the surface on what is right for maximum yield. There's too many variables there, but what we've noticed is that it doesn't take a lot of plants to get the same amount of yield as if you have more. We're not going to say that by planting canola you're going to get a whole bunch more yield, but you're not going to go backwards. And by not going backwards, you're still way ahead, because we're cutting down on seed costs. So on our farm, on Jeff's farm, we're around 2 to 2.5 pounds. With the varying in seed weight, you're going to be anywhere from 200,000 to 300,000 seeds per acre.
A very big difference that you see by putting it in with a planter is your germination rates go up by a very big margin as compared to a drill. Drills, you get a lot of seed bounce, especially the really wide ones. I know they make seed breaks and stuff, but it's still not the same as having your row with your seed in it dropping into the ground. So your seed to soil contact with a planter is far superior to an air drill or air seeder or whatever you have. We see 90+% germination with this machine as compared to our air seeder that we used to use, where it was usually right around 60. You could go out in July and still see seed on top of the ground that hadn't grown yet. Where with the planter, there's never seeds sitting on top of the ground, or I shouldn't say never, I guess it could happen, but very rare, and your germination numbers are way higher. So you're getting the value of your seed.
This is a tough question to answer, but on our farm we run 20 inch. On Jeff's farm he runs 15 inch, and I would say the only real difference between the two wouldn't be yield. It'd be the competition with weeds. With a 15-inch row, you're going to have more competition against the weeds, so you're probably only going to have to spray Liberty or your Clearfield chemical or Roundup one application. You can get away with one application. When you go to the wider row spacings like 20 or 22, you're going to probably have to factor in a second herbicide application, or make sure that you have a pre-emerge down and go that'll get you later into the season. So that's something you have to take into account. Another advantage about planting canola with wider row spacings than a traditional air seeder, which is anywhere from 4 to 10 and sometimes 15, is that by having wider rows, you actually have more airflow going through the plants. Therefore, there's less disease, and you can actually try to avoid fungicide application. Again, this is based on the year. If it's really wet, we still recommend putting a fungicide application down, but you do have more airflow, you should have less disease pressure, which in growing canola is a major factor. You really need to pay attention to the varieties that you're putting down. Some varieties like to really branch out, and some varieties like to stand straight up. If you have a standing straight up variety, then you're probably going to want to be staying with 15-inch rows, or just not put it in with a planter. It's not a variety you want to put in with a planter. Some of the varieties that branch out, those are the ones you're going to want to put in, because it leaves them a lot of room to go out. And we've seen varieties that are actually written off. Guys are not putting them in anymore, and they're our highest yielding varieties, because with putting them in with the planter, you actually gained a whole new atmosphere for that, or habitat for that variety, and it's pushing yields that we've never seen before.
With the proper depth control that you get with a planter, and the way it drops every seed in the ground, the seed to soil contact usually comes with very good emergence, which leads to much easier timing for your herbicide application. You don't get large plants that shouldn't be getting chemical on them later on down the road. Your fungicide, like your flowering, comes way more even. So your fungicide timing is a lot better if you need to do it. And even your swathing and harvest, you don't have to desiccate if you're straight combining. You're not going to have these green spots in the ditches that you're killing out unless you have heavy rain or whatever. But it makes a big difference from an agronomy standpoint as far as timing and just the way it comes up, germination, everything like that.
Well, this is really up to you. This is something that that by being so committed to planting canola and really planting everything on our farm other than cereals, is that you have to be way ahead of the game as far as fertilizers control is concerned. So you need to put it down in fall. I know for some areas in Canada and the US, you just can't do that. You can't put it down in fall, so you have to be creative in spring and try to get it down somehow, and it poses a big problem. But there are ways of doing it. On our farm, we do a fall application. We put down our dry and anhydrous all together. We actually are now toying with putting it down in rows. And so in 20-inch rows, we'll put the dry and ammonia down in the same row. And then with RTK, we'll actually plant directly on top.